Okay, so let's look at 1.3 and take a breath on this one. This one's going to be a little bit of a challenging lesson. I do not expect, nor do I want you to finish this in 1 minute. Okay, so when I write down and explain different parts, I want you to really slow down, write that down, see if you understand it. You might need to rewind a little bit. You need to talk as a group, because for this section, there might be certain things I need to go back and teach that maybe you didn't learn in elementary school, and that's totally okay. I'm going to put in a few things that I'm pretty sure you probably don't remember or may not have been exposed to, that are things in 6th grade Common Core that will help you in this. So even when the other class is going to have homework, yours, well, this is where we're going to start getting a little bit off of the other group, where sometimes your homework won't match. And that's why it's really important that you wrote down the planner information on the sheet. Okay, so let's start with the launch. First of all, I want you to try it. And remember, I need you to press pause. Okay, you're going to press pause. You're going to talk it out, underline key things. And you're going to notice something about this close and check. Okay, this launch. So go ahead. It says, how many pairs must you place on plate 3? Okay, so you're first looking and deciding, in order to keep plate 3 equivalent to plate 1 and 2, you need to think what's going to be your reasoning and how are you going to determine how many pairs I need on that final plate. Okay, so go ahead and pause. When everyone in your group has a response and you've talked it through, then go ahead as a group, go ahead and play. Okay, now I'm not going to leave much time for between the pausing, me saying pause, and me having you start the video. Okay, so go ahead and pause. All right, at this point you should have looked and you notice that it says ratios of apples to pears. Okay, so I want you in the habit of writing that apples to pears. They're having you write it with colons. So in this first one, you should have had 4 to 2. We're not reducing it at this point. I know we were doing unit rates, and that can help us because eventually we're looking at apples. But at this point, we're going to go straight from what is on the plate. So apples, I have 6 to 3. Okay, so now I'm looking at, I've got 1 apple. And your first guess might have been to have 2 pairs, right? Because I see there's 4 to 2, 6 to 3. So I see that one is half of the other. So there's half the number of pairs that there are apples. So your first instinct might be to put a 2, because we're used to pretty numbers. We're used to whole numbers, and whole numbers are easy to work with. But in this case, we're not getting a whole number. I have 4 to 2, so that's 4 to 2. 2 is half of 4. 6 to 3. 3 is half of 6. So now I've got 1 apple to how many pairs? What's half of 1? 1/2. Okay, so if you got 1/2 that was correct, you may go, how is that 1/2? It's because don't get in the habit of thinking that numbers are always going to be whole numbers. So throughout this unit today, we're going to be working a lot with fractions, multiplying fractions, finding equivalent fractions, changing the name of fractions, improper fractions, and mixed numbers. So we're going to get a little bit of everything with fractions. This is where, feel free, if you're like, oh, I don't quite remember that with fractions, just let me know and we can make sure that you feel comfortable moving forward. Okay, so at this point you should have your launch question done, and you should also have open your Realize videos so that you can work along with me. I have embedded, which means put in, a few extra pieces of content that I think that some are in your notes and some aren't. But when I'm writing and when I'm adding things in, remember, a good learner takes notes and writes down key ideas to help them. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at the first one. So go ahead and click within Realize. You're just moving through. So you're on Realize. And you are now in 1-3 part 1, and it's going to look like this. Okay, so the first thing you need to do is you need to read through as a group. So it says you can have a ratio where one term is a fraction. So like in the previous examples when we were always looking at a ratio like 3 to 2, okay, And what we are still going to be able to do is we're going to simplify these ratios. But in order to do that, we have to first change it into a whole number. Okay, so let's look at our sample. Okay, so I have 4/5 over 6. Okay, and I want to put this in lowest terms. And you're like, yikes. If it was 3 over 6, it'd be easy. I just divide them both by 3. But it's not. It's a fraction. So this ratio would be 4/5 to 6. So say I get 4/5 of a cookie to every 6 cookies my kids get. I don't know. Okay, that would be this ratio. Okay, technically it should be cookie to cookie. Okay, but when I look at this one, the first thing I have to do is I have to change it. So even though I have this and this right here in your notes, okay, I want you to go ahead and write it with me. It's just a little easier when you're actually doing the practice, okay? So the first thing I do is I'm identifying where my fraction is, which is right here. 6 is fine. It's already a whole number, so I don't need to change that one. So to change 4/5 to a whole number, I have to multiply by its denominator, okay? So to understand that, if I have 4/5 and I need to get that 5 gone into a whole number, so I don't have a denominator that a numerator denominator, I'm going to multiply it times that 5, okay? Because these will cancel each other out, okay? So that's called cross-canceling when you multiply in a fraction. So 4/5, now if I didn't know that and I multiply it times 5, remember that's the same as 4/5 times 5 over 1, okay, multiplying fractions, okay. Then I can do 4 times 5 is 20, 5 over 1 is 5, 20 divided by 5, because remember fractions just like a division problem, equals 4. So that means that if I multiply this times 5, whatever I do to the top, I have to do to the bottom because I'm multiplying it times a whole, 5/5. That equals 4. 6 times 5, well, that's easy. That equals 30. Notice the pattern. Whenever I multiply a fraction by its denominator, it's always going to equal its numerator. And so 4/5 times 5 over 1, these will cross cancel, leaving me with 4 times 1, because 5 divided by 5 is 1, and 5 divided by 5 is 1, giving me 4 over 1. So it's always going to be this numerator. Okay, so that gives me 4/30. But I'm not done yet. So I'm going to look for my greatest common factor. I'm going to divide by that greatest common factor, and this is where you might need to pause me a little bit, and that's okay. Okay, and I have 4 over 30, so the greatest common factor is 2. So whenever I do the numerator, I also have to do the denominator. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 30 divided by 2 is 15. So this fraction, this ratio, 4/5 over 6, can when we're looking for its simplest form, is going to be 2/15. Okay, so we're going to practice this. This is definitely a little bit challenging. So when I look at digits, digits walks you through that too. Digits realize walks you through it too. But remember, writing down those extra things, that's what's going to help you feel successful in this. Okay, so you'll notice like I can go over and see the next one, and it's going to jump straight into the next sample. However, I have a couple extra samples in here for you to try it. Okay, so let's try it first. So I have 2/3 over 8. So first step, I'm identifying where my fraction is, which is right here. Okay, in this case, I only have one fraction. It's in my numerator. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply by that fraction's denominator. So it'd be 3. Whatever I do the top, I have to do the bottom. Okay, so 2/3 times 3, remember, I can divide both of these by 3, which is going to get me 1. So 2 times 1 over 1 times 1 is 2 over 1, which equals 2. And we saw that in the last time, that whenever I multiply a fraction by its denominator, I'm going to end up with the numerator. And then 8 times 3 is 24. I'm going to divide those each by 2, which is the greatest common factor, which gets me to 1/12. How did we do? Try the next one as a group. So talk it out, pause me, talk it out, and then when you're done, you're gonna unpause, and I'm gonna make sure that you understand it. So first, talk it out as a group. Make sure that you pause your video. Okay, so let's see if my work matches yours. Okay, so I had 3/5, excuse me, over 4. So I multiply by 5. That's going to get me 3 as my numerator. And then whatever I do the top, I do the bottom, which is 4 times 5, which is 20. That's in simplest forms. 3 is a prime number and 20 is composite, but it doesn't have any factor other than 1 that is in common with the 3. So I'm already in simplest form. Okay, now go ahead, pause me again, but this time I want you to do the next one by yourself to make sure that you have it. Okay, how does your work look? So it says 3, the ratio is 3 to 2/7. This time, my fraction is actually in my denominator, which is totally fine. Don't get in the habit of thinking it's in the numerator. My process stays the same. So I want 2/7 to change to a whole number. So I'm still multiplying times its denominator to get that numerator of 2. Okay? Whatever I do the bottom, I have to do the top because I'm multiplying by a whole, so 7/7 is a whole. 3 times 7 is 21. My ratio is 21 to 2. And because 21's factors are 1, 3, 7, and 21, and 2's are only 1 and 2, they don't have any common factors, so I already have it in simplest form. Okay, hopefully that makes it a little bit easier as we move into the next problem. So now we've done some problems where like it's straight, here it is, find in simplest form. Now what you have to do is you have to actually build the first ratio and then build the second ratio and then compare it. So what I want you to do, it says your neighbor commutes 12 miles to work, you commute 9/10 miles to school, excuse me. So notice I want you, so this goes 12 miles to work, 9/10 of a mile to school. The first one, what you always want to get in the habit of doing is write your neighbor's commute to your commute, okay, as a fraction in simplest form. Then you're doing the ratio of your commute to, notice I'm circling the 2 so I know where either my fraction bar or my colon will be, and then my neighbor's commute, and then you're going to compare them. Okay, so I want you to try this one out, set it up. You should have a problem for A, you should have a problem for B. For this one, when you go to check your work, you're going to be in your program, excuse me. So 1-3 part 1, and we already went through the first one. So here's this one. Now that you see this play button right there, okay, you're going to go ahead and play that, and it's going to walk you through this problem, okay? So I want you on this, sometimes I walk you through, so I've got to change that, and sometimes you're going to be walking through it with the program. So for this one, I want you to go ahead and try it. The problem's going to take you a while. Then I want you to go ahead and walk through it as a group with realize. So don't skip over that. After you get this done, check your answer and realize and see what you did. Okay, they're going to be talking about something called a reciprocal. So a reciprocal is used in dividing fractions, if you remember dividing fractions. So like the reciprocal of 3/4 is 4/3. It's when I flip the numerator and the denominator. The reciprocal of 1, 2, and 2 is 2/1. Okay, it's when I'm changing what's on the top and what's on the bottom. Okay, so once you get done with this one, go back into realize and double check that problem together as a group and see how you did. Once you have checked it and realize, then you're going to play the video again, because then I'm going to be jumping in to the got it. Okay, so pause me now and start on the realize. Okay, let's go ahead. You are now ready to look at the got it. So an athlete runs on a treadmill for 3/4 of an hour. The athlete then lifts weights for 2 hours. Write the ratio of running time to weightlifting time as a fraction in simplest form. So the first thing I see is I want running time first. So running time is 3/4 over 2 hours. Okay? Now solve. Okay? And then find your answer. Pause me when you're done. Go ahead and unpause me when you think you have it correct. Okay, so the first thing I did, it says running time to weightlifting. Now I multiply the top by 4 because I'm looking for this right here. Okay, and that gets my numerator 3 pulled out. 2 times 4 is 8, leaving me with 3 to 8. A. So if you got 8 to 3, you were close. You probably just flip-flopped. You probably had the reason you have the reciprocal is because you had the weightlifting time on the top and the running time on the bottom. So you always want to underline. When I look at your notes, I should see that it's underlined. Okay? So as we are moving into the next section, 'cause it's going to get a little bit more messy. This is something you probably want to write down in your notes that I did not put in there officially. This is called cross-canceling. So we teach with multiplying fractions the importance of actually, before I get to the answer of reducing, I can do something called cross-canceling before I multiply a fraction. Okay, so if I look at 3/4 times 2/4, the diagonals can cancel each other out. So when I look at 3, the diagonal this way, the 3 and the 4, I can't divide either one of them by anything, and as a result, I can't cross-cancel. However, this way, I've got a 4 and a 2. So I can divide both of those by a common factor, which is 2. So if I divide 2 by 2, that's going to get me 1. 4 divided by 2 is 2. 3 times 1 is 3. 2 times 4 is 8. So the answer to that problem is 8. I don't need to reduce. If I had done it without cross-canceling, I'd have 3 times 2 is 6, 4 times 4 is 16. I can divide both of those by 2, giving me 3/8. I get the same answer, I just canceled and reduced as I went. So let's look at this next one, 4/5 times 25/40. Now I could multiply 4 times 25 and 5 times 40 and then try and reduce down, or I can cross cancel. So I look this way, there's a 4 and a 40. Can I divide anything out? Yes, I can divide 4 out of each one. 4 divided by 4 is 1, 40 divided by 4 is 10. Now I look this way, can I cross cancel anything that way? Yep, 5 and 25, I can divide them both by 5. 5 divided by 5 is 1. 25 divided by 5 is 5 because I have to divide them by the same number. So 1 times 5 is 5, 1 times 10 is 10. So that gets me to 5/10 as my answer. Now I can continue here by dividing this down by 5. And I see that my answer is 1/2, okay? Or I could have done 4 times 25 is 100 over 5 times 4, which is 200, and then divided and still get 1/2. But if I cross cancel, it saves me a little bit of work. The other thing I want you to remember as we're moving into the next section is that when I have like 2/3 times 30, remember that 30 is the same as 30 over 1. So if I do 2 times 3 times 30, that's the same as 30 over 1. So from here, I could get 60 over 3, and 60 divided by 3 would give me 20 over 1, which is just 20, right? Depending on if I want the ratio, if I want the actual answer. Sorry, my finger was over the camera. Okay, or I could have cross canceled a little bit, and I divided these each by 3, giving this 1 and this 10, because I divided each by 3. 2 times 10 is 20. 1 times 1 is 1. Still get the answer of 20. So keep that in mind. You can cross cancel, and whenever I multiply times a whole number, that's the whole number over 1. Okay, now this next section is going to get a little messy. And so I want you to keep in mind this whole part that I just went over. That's why I added that in. So make sure that you have paused, you've written that down, that you understand how to cross cancel. And as I check in with you, make sure that if that part doesn't make sense, you let me know. Okay? So now go ahead and look at the next one. Now we're on the key concept. So when you pull up the key concept, got that pulled up here, it says you can have ratios where both terms are fractions. So the ones we were looking at, either the numerator was a fraction or the denominator, but not both. Okay, so you're going to simplify these first by finding equivalent ratios where both terms are whole numbers. So, and then once you've multiplied by a least common multiple, it's one of the reasons we were focusing on that before this, then you're going to have a ratio in simplest form. So let's go ahead and look at their sample. So they have 3/4 over 6/7. Now your first thought might be, well, I'll just multiply this by 4 and then I get a 3. But whatever I do the top, I do the bottom. So now I'm multiplying this times 4 and I don't have that 6 coming out because I don't have a 4 on the bottom. Okay, so what I want to look for is a least common multiple, a number that that both numbers can equal through multiplication. So if I have 3/4 and 7 and 6/7, I want to look at the 7 and the 4. What is a number I can multiply that is a least common multiple, a number that they both have in common? So for like 7, its multiples are 7, 14, 21. Nope, none of those are multiples of 4. And then there's 28. Okay, so the least common multiple is going to be 28. So I'm going to multiply this times 28. Or I do the bottom, I do the top. Okay, so where I got the 28 is it's the least common multiple between 4 and 7. So that now leaves me with this part here. I have 3/4 times 28 and 6/7 times 28. So I'm going to write that out. Now the one thing it doesn't really show you is that part where it's really 28 over 1, right? 28 over 1. Now I can cross cancel. So now I'm trying to figure out what these are equal to. Sorry, it's a little bit diagonal. So 6 and 1, I can't divide anything out, but the 7 and the 28, I can divide by 7. 28 divided by 7 is 4. 7 divided by 7 is 1. That means the bottom is 6 times 4, which is 24. 1 times 1 is 1, so it'd be 24 over 1, or just 24. Now I look at this one. 3, 1, there's nothing to cross cancel, but here I can. 28 divided by 4 is 7. 4 divided by 4 is 1. 3 times 7 is 21. 1 times 1 is 1. 21 over 1 is simply 21. That's where that comes from. Okay, that's how they got this number right here. Now I can reduce further. What can I divide both 21 and 24 by? I can divide them both by 3. Okay, so 21 divided by 3 is 7. 24 divided by 3 is 8. So that gives me 7/8. You may need to watch that part multiple times, and that's okay. You see it once, just for an overall understanding. You watch it again for some of the bit smaller details, and then you watch it again to really, truly get it. That's why this lesson is going to take you multiple days, okay? Because I want to make sure that you feel comfortable with it. Okay, so right now, we don't forget to cross cancel. You didn't have to cross cancel, but it just makes life easier. Okay, so let's go ahead and look at these next ones. You're going to do this true, false. I have like a little workspace that looks like this, okay? I expect you to use it. So when I see 2/3, 1/5, okay, you're trying to see if this is true or if this is false, okay? You're going to check your answers in Realize. So when you look here, we are now on, oops, sorry, I'm too far. Nope, no, I'm not. Okay, so you're going to kind of drag these, but I don't want you to just drag and be like, oh, I can just kind of move them around and see if I get it right. I want you to actually work them out. Okay, so go ahead, do 2/3 over 1/5. We're going to check that one here pretty quick. Okay, so I will kind of walk you through that one and just to see if you can get that one. Okay, 2/3 over 1/5. First thing, locating my denominators. There they are. So I'm looking for a least common multiple. Okay, something that they can both be multiplied by. to equal, excuse me. So they can both equal 15, right? So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to multiply them both by 15. Whatever I do the top, I have to do the bottom, okay? That gives me this. So now I know that I'm doing 2/3 times 15 over 1. And you'll start noticing some patterns when you're multiplying as well. Okay, so far so good? Now I'm going to see if there's anything I can, so 2 and 1 that I can cross cancel. No, 3 and 15. Yep, I can divide them both by 3, giving me 5 and giving this 1 because I divided them both by 3. Okay, so now I've got, sorry, it's a little messy. 2 times 5 is 10. 1 times 1 is 1. Okay, so the top's done. Now I've got 1/5 and 15 over 1. I can cross cancel there. That gives me 1 because I'm dividing by 5. 15 divided by 5 is 3. 1 times 3 is 3. 1 times 1 is 1. So that gives me just 3. So 10/3. So that one would be true. What do you think? Okay, go ahead and try the next two and then double check your answer in digits. Now remember, I should see, so this work would be down here. I should see this one's work here and this one work here so that when I come check on you, I can see whether you're doing it right or wrong. Okay, and where your issues might be, because this is a little tricky. Remember, use those skills and then feel free when I'm coming and checking in. And if you're not quite there, it's okay because this is a difficult lesson. Feel free and make sure that you check and let me know. And I'm going to be checking your work. If you don't have work on this part right here, I will make you go back because it is something that it's important that you're practicing all parts, okay? So go ahead, pause, work on this part for a while. It'll probably take you quite a while, and then make sure that you're working together and talking it out, okay? And when you're done with that section, go ahead and unpause me. Okay, now that you've checked that part and realized, now I want you to do one on your own. So those you were working together as a group, now I'd like you to work this one out on your own. So go ahead, look at it, try it, let's see where you're at, and then you're going to unpause me and we're going to see how we did, okay? All right, let's see how we did. So first thing I did is I looked and I identified my denominators, which are 4 and 10, and I looked for a least common multiple, which for me I saw was 20, because 4 times 5 equals 20, and 10 times 2 equals 20. So I multiplied them both by 20. So 3/4 times 20 over 1, I cross-canceled. I could divide both this way by 4, giving me 5. 3 times 5 is 15. 1 over 1 is 1, so that just equal 15. That's where I got this number here. Okay, now I did this times 20, so 9/10 times 20 over 1. These will cross cancel. I divide them both by 10, sorry. 20 divided by 10 is 2. 10 divided by 1 is 1. 9 times 2 is 18. Over 1 would be 18. That is where I got this. So far, so good. Now I have to divide down to make it into its least, its lowest form. So I divide by 3, and that gives me 5/6. You should be asking where'd the gallon go? Well, because I'm dividing gallon by gallon, that gallon is going to go away, okay? Because they're going to cancel each other out, leaving me with 5/6 as my ratio. Easier? Okay. Once again, let me know because I'm going to add in one more step, okay? As I said before, this is going to take you a couple days to kind of work through and understand. So at this point, go ahead, make sure you understand that one. If you need to rewatch it, you can, because I'm going to add in conversion factors within, okay? So if you've gotten this far with the lesson on day 1, okay, your brain might be ready for a little break to rewatch some of it, make sure you've got it before you begin this one. So when we look, so you might start back at this part on day 2. So just make sure you're always using the same computer for Edpuzzle because it won't let you skip ahead. So you're going to want to stay on the same one. Okay, when you look at this one, you see a professional football field. So go ahead and pause. If you need a little brain break, that's fine to rewatch part of the video, because notice here now I'm working with yards, and I want you, when you look at your sample sheet, this will pop up when you press play. Feel free to watch the whole video. It's kind of cute. Okay, a professional football field is 53 1/3 yards wide. Find the ratio of the width of the actual field to the width of the field in the poster. Okay, so the first thing I see is that this would be, so I want actual to the one on the poster, 1 1/2. Okay, this has multiple pieces that make it a little bit messy. The first thing that makes it a little bit messy is you need to change whenever you have a mixed number. And remember, a fraction that's a mixed number is one that has something like this, right? 2 1/3. That's a mixed number. And so when I'm doing multiplying or dividing fractions, I don't want mixed numbers. I want to change them into improper fractions. So to do that, remember that if I have 2 1/3, technically that means I've got 2 wholes, right? And 1/3 of another one. That would be the same as 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and they're cut into thirds, 7/3. Now I can get that by saying I've got 2 wholes times, each whole is cut up into 3 pieces, 2 times 3 is 6, and I can add that 1. That's where we get that 7 from. Or I can draw it, either one. But the shortcut would be remembering the meaning of this whole. And this whole is cut into 3 parts. So that's going to be 2 times 3 is 6, plus my 1 left over gives me 7/3. So before I mess with anything with fractions, with multiplying, dividing, I'm always going to change those mixed numbers. So what I see right away is that I've got a mixed number. 53 1/3, okay? And it is fine on this one if you're using a calculator, because my main focus is not the multiplication of all these numbers as much as the concept. So 53 times 1/3. So I'm going to multiply 53 times 3, which gives me 159 plus my 1 left over. So this right here is 160 yards, okay? So I did 53 times 3, which is 159, plus 1 is 160 yards. Okay, so I just realized that I forgot to press record. So I need to go back just a little bit to where I just left off. So sorry about that, and that little bit of confusion there. Okay, so what I just had up here was that 53 1/3 yard to the 1 1/2 feet. Okay, so we had already changed that, and that's 160 over 3 yards. Okay, sorry about that little jump in the taping. Okay, so now I'm going to do the same thing here. So I've got 2 times 1 is 2 plus 1 is 3, so that gives me 3 1/2 feet. Okay, well, the first thing I see is, oh no, I have yards and feet. And just like we talked about in our other ratio problems, you can't have that. We need to convert them. So I'm going to go ahead and change the yards to feet. Okay, so I have 160 for 3 yards. Okay, I know that there's 3 feet in a yard. And if I wasn't sure of what that is, remember I look back to 1-1 where I gave you some common conversions. Now I want these yards to cancel out, so I'm going to multiply. I want the yards on the bottom so that it cancels out, and feet. So there's 3 feet in 1 yard. Okay, so right now I'm just converting the yards to feet, because I want those to eventually cancel out as well. So I can cross cancel, so I see 3 and 3. Okay, those can both divide by 3. That gives me 1, 1, because I'm dividing both by 3. So I have 160 yards, which will then cancel out, and feet. Okay, so I'm left with 160 over 1 foot, which would just equal 160 feet. So that means that 160 thirds of yards is going to equal 160 feet. Okay, if you weren't sure what I did, rewind it a little bit, rewatch that segment, because you're going to need to be able to do that. So what that tells me is that this is the same as this. They're equal to each other. I just converted it, and it's 3 over 2 feet. So now what I'm left with is simply something like we did in the prior problems, okay? So I have 160 feet over 3 half feet. The feet and feet will divide out, leaving me with my ratio. Now I look and identify, here's my fraction. I just have one fraction, so I just have one denominator, so that I need to multiply out. So I'm going to multiply both those by 2. I don't have to find a common multiple because there's not a fraction up here. I have a nice pretty whole number. So 160 times 2 is 320. 2 times 2, 3 halves times 2 is simply 3. I can't divide either one of those because 320 is not divisible by 3. I know that because I can, trick with 3's is I can add up its individual digits. 3 plus 2 plus 0 is 5. That's not divisible by 3, so therefore I'm done. It's 320 to 3. You might need to watch this one multiple times. Watch it the first time just to kind of overall understand it. Watch it a second time for more of the details. And watch it that third time and go, now I get it, okay? Because this one's tricky, okay? Once you feel you've had it, you've double-checked it, you've looked over it, go ahead and try the last problem, which is the got it. Excuse me, I'm going to sneeze. Okay, now when you do this got it, I want you to truly pause me. I want you to decide, are we going to try it together, or are we going to try it on our own and then help each other out? It's going to take all your brain power, but this is something that you're going to have to be able to do on your own. So I want you to really take your time and think it through. Okay, then I will walk you through it. Okay, so go ahead, take a few minutes and make sure that you're underlining the numbers, you're deciding what's your original ratio, whether you need to change the numbers to improper and so forth. Okay, go ahead and pause me, and then I will work on this problem, and then I'll explain it to you. Okay, let's look at the first part. Did you get 6 1/4 inches over 12 1/2 feet? Because I want model boat to actual boat. Then I can't mess around with mixed numbers. I need to change them to improper. 4 times 6 is 6, plus 1 is 24, excuse me, plus 1 is 25 over 4, because my denominator, I'm still cutting it up into fourths, because 25 divided by 4 equals 6 1/4. 24 plus 1 is 25 over 2. Okay, if you got that far, great. Keep watching my explanation. If you didn't get that far, double check, check your work, fix that, and then try the next step again. Okay, let's see if you got the next part. So I've got inches and feet, so I have to change one of them. So I'm going to change the feet to inches. So I did my work up here. I took 25 over 2 feet, okay, and I wanted to change it to inches. So I said there's 12 inches in 1 foot. Feet, the feet are diagonal from each other. Feet and feet will cancel each other out. Then I said, well, I can cross cancel. 25 divided by 2 is 6. 2 divided by 2 is 1. 25 times 6 is 150 inches. 1 times 1 is 1, meaning that I can change this one right here because it's equal to 150 inches. Now I simply have this. How did we do? Okay. Now if you've got it, great. If you didn't get this far, now start here, rewind parts and try and figure it out. Now here I look, I've got one fraction, so I'm going to multiply that times 4. Whenever I do the bottom, I do the top, leaving me this 4 and 4 will make it so that my 25 inches is here. 150 times 4, well, 2 sets of 150 is 300, so 4 sets would be 600. So it's 600 inches. These will cancel out. Now I've got 25 over 600. And I know that I can do like $6 divided by quarters, so therefore I know I can divide these each by 25. Okay. That's going to give me 25 divided by 25 is 1. $6 into quarters, that's going to be 24 quarters, so my answer is 1/24. Okay, that's another one. Don't feel like you shouldn't rewatch if you need to. That's what I said. We're going to give 2 days on this. Okay, once you feel you've watched it and you understand it, I want you to go ahead and check out the close and check. There's not a ton of space for this close and check, so you might be having lots of math all over your paper. I'm okay with you checking your problems with calculators. I'm okay with some of the bigger numbers, but remember, sometimes you can cross cancel, and that's going to make it a lot easier than when you're trying to do everything with the big numbers that it gives you. Okay, once you have that, you will go ahead and check your close and check, and then I'm going to come and I'm going to keep checking in on you, so let me know of any parts that when you're doing this you're just not 100% sure of. Okay, nice work. This is a tricky one, so really take your time to do the close and check. Show your work, work together, and talk it out.